Hello and welcome to today's Bitrix 24 training smart process automation. Thank you very much for joining today. Okay, so first of all, we'll just go through some introductions. So I'm Sam Connor, I'm sales manager here at Interface, and we're Bitrix 24 Gold Partners. So just to give you a bit more of a background to Interface. So as I say, we're Gold Partners for Bitrix 24. We're based in York, New York, and Hong Kong. So what we do is we offer a full range of services to help you with Bitrix 24, starting off with pre-sale support. So let's say we do pre-sale support, so we can help you to evaluate the Bitrix 24 system. So if you are currently evaluating Bitrix, please do get in contact and we can help you with the evaluation process. If you are looking to implement Bitrix, we can help with the implementation of the system. And there are two additions to Bitrix 24. So we have the Bitrix 24 Cloud, and we also have the Bitrix 24 self-hosted solution. Now, what we can do is we can provide our hosting service for the Bitrix 24 self-hosted system. And then once you've got Bitrix set up, we can provide bespoke training and also ongoing dedicated support to help you to get the most value out of the Bitrix 24 system. So alongside me today, I have Andy Naylor with me.
Hi guys. Yeah, as Sam said, I'm Andy and I'm the head of customer success here at Interface. I'll be taking you through the live training shortly and how you can set up a smart process automation for client feedback. As always, if you have any questions throughout this particular session, please put them in the box provided and we can answer them as we go through.
Great, thanks, Andy. Okay, so moving on then from the introduction, before we go into look at the training in more detail, what we'll do first of all is just actually understand what smart process automation actually is. So essentially, smart process automation is a customizable type of element inside the CRM. Okay, so it gives you the ability to create your own CRM entities, to manage really any types of processes that you have in the Bitrix 24 CRM system. And therefore, it gives you the tools to create your own pipelines and processes through stages and automations. So whereas before you would have to adapt leads and deals to really manage any type of internal process that your company has, now you can create your own work scenarios inside the CRM. So essentially, you can take the CRM system to the next level. And in today's training session, we're going to be showing you the SPA module on a cloud system. But just to be clear, you need to have at least a professional cloud license to have access to the SPA's features. So if you are currently on a free, on a basic or a standard cloud license, you will need to upgrade to the professional cloud license as a minimum to be able to access the smart process automation feature. So if you are on one of those instances and you're looking to use the smart process automation tool, then you can get in contact with one of our team. We'll be happy to help you to upgrade your account. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll take a look at several use cases for SPAs. So we've been implementing SPAs for a lot of our clients. So what we'll do here is show you a selection of the most common use cases so far that we're seeing, and some really good use cases for how SPAs can be used for your processes inside the CRM system. Okay, so let's go over to our Bitrix 24 system. So as I say, we're on the Bitrix 24 professional cloud site. If you're on a self-hosted or on-premise edition of Bitrix, then you have access to SPAs on any of the self-hosted editions. So first of all, what I want to show you is if you're trying to find the smart process automation tool, I'll just show you how you can find it first of all. So on the system here, what we can do is we can go and search inside the universal search area here for the smart process automation tool. Or what we can do as well is if we go into the CRM system, then what we can do inside here, you may see it at the top in your tab here where the smart process automation feature is, or it could be in the MAR settings here. So just have a look within there and you should be able to then find your smart process automation tool. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the use cases. So first of all, the first use case we're going to look at today is employee onboarding. So how we can manage the onboarding of our staff through the SPA features. Okay, so the first area we'll see today, so in our employee onboarding SPA, you can see here it looks very similar, first of all, to leads and deals. So it uses a lot of the same framework, but within each of the SPAs you set up, you can create your very own stages and essentially the whole workflow for managing that process. So here for employee onboarding, you can see here the different stages that we're going to be processing the employee through. So right now we can see the current entities for the employees that we're working with. And here we're in the Kanban view. And just like on leads and deals, we can convert that into the list view. So here we can customize, see the list view here. You can change the layouts of this information here. And you can create custom fields on your SPA. So Andy's going to show us this later on, but essentially we can create our very own fields for managing information on the SPA. So here is our employee onboarding SPA workflow. So if we just go into one of the employees that we're currently onboarding, inside the SPA, you've got the full record for the employee here that we're onboarding. So we can see here the breakdown of the information that we have for our employee. So we've got the information on Joshua here. And again, as we've mentioned there, you can create custom fields to capture all of the necessary information about the onboarding of the employee here. And on the right-hand side, in any of the SPAs, you've got your activity stream. So you can manage communications through email. I might want to tag my colleague just to make them aware of the latest for the onboarding of Joshua. Okay, so we can add those notes and tag our colleagues. So a lot of the functionality we've got within the CRM, you can then add into your SPAs here. So we've got our records here for onboarding our employees, but within your SPAs as well, what we can do is we can add different pipelines. So as you're progressing through your workflow, so for example here, once the employee has been onboarded, we can then move them into the employed pipeline for our SPA. So here you can see the stages, they're completely different here. So the staff is onboarded, they're in the employee workflow now, and you can see the different stages that we have set up now for our employed employees. So we've got the 3-month review here for Andy Naylor. So again, we can click into that information, and then I can see all of the details here for that 3-month review. So again, here the sections are different, the fields are different. So essentially you're in complete control as to the types of information you need to show for every single element of the workflows you create using smart process automation. Now, another really nice feature with the SPA tool is the ability to actually connect other SPAs with each other. So for example, here inside Andy Naylor's record on their 3-month review, we can see here we have an employee certifications element as well. And this is another SPA. So that's a completely separate SPA which is connected. So here we can actually see all of the training certifications that Andy Naylor has accomplished and processed. So you can essentially connect different SPA items together to store and connect any relevant information. So if I wanted to now see Andy's certification here for the Bittrex certification, I can click into there and it will open up that separate SPA element. So here I can see all of the information about Andy's certification. So all of that information is then connected to the other SPA record. So you really can connect as many SPAs together as you need to have all of that information interconnected. Okay, so that's a look there at our employee onboarding. And then if we go into that employee certifications SPA, so where we can manage all of the training logs for our employees, we've got all of that information set up here. And with our employee certifications here, we can go into that record again, and you can see the stages on the employee certification based on the expiration dates of their training record. So I can see Andy's Bittrex training certification. It expires here in 2024. And what we are using here is the power of the automation engine to automatically update the stage here of their renewal. So if we go into our automations rule, what we are using here is the automation engine to automatically update the stage that their training certificate is at. So you could really use this for a lot of different processes where you're going to have dates, and on those expiration dates an action needs to take place. So right now, for example, we can see here the automation. So 2 months before that expiration date, we're automatically going to be moving them to their 2-month renewal. So once that 60 days hits, it will update them to 2-month renewal. And then once we are 10 days before the expiration date of that training record, it's going to move the entity to the urgent renewal. So we can use automations here to streamline that certification process and make sure your training manager is up to date and aware that their certification needs to be renewed and that action needs to take place. Okay, so that's a look at our, essentially the connection there between our employee onboarding and our employee certifications processes. So there's some really useful use cases for smart process automation. Another really common use case is also registrations. So as for today, for example, on a webinar registration. So what we can do inside here is, let's just take a look. So we can see our registration workflow. So once we have attendee information, we can then progress through to where the attendee has confirmed. And then once the webinar has been completed, we've got a post-webinar stage here. So we can add all of the entities into their relevant stages. And then once again, on the automation rules here, we've got some powerful automation set up. So once we have completed the webinar and the users are moved to the post-webinar email stage, what we can then do is we've got an email communication going out to them, which is dynamically populated with information about the end of the webinar with a link to the recordings. So essentially, you're starting to see here how using the smart process automation feature, you can design and set up any type of workflow directly inside the CRM system, use the stages and use the automation engine to streamline the entire process inside the system. And what we'll look at shortly, oh, sorry.
Sam, I was just about to say, there's a question just come through that said, can you keep this information private or only shared with few people, not the entire organization?
Okay, yeah, it's a really good question, and absolutely. So if we go into our access permissions, so inside the settings, if we go to access permissions, if we go into the CRM, I guess just to explain a little about permissions, what we do in the CRM system is we set up roles, and then based on the role that we assign to the user, you can set specific access rights. But what is really useful is every single SPA that you set up, you can then set up those access rights. So for example, where we just looked at earlier on the employee onboarding, for example, what we can do is we can set up access rights across that SPA, even drilling down to every single stage that the process goes through. So for example, if I just show you here, we've got our different types of permissions here. So if we can read, add, update, delete and export, you can then set up those access rights. So we might say, for example, we might only allow the employee to be able to read information, or actually we might deny all access to that SPA record. So you can set up and control the access rights on each SPA record inside the system. Okay, so yeah, it's a really good question. And if there are any other questions, please do add them into the question box and we can run through those for you. But there is a selection of examples. In a second, we'll take a look at how we can manage the process for actually getting client feedback into an SPA record. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to move on to look at how we can actually manage a client feedback process through our SPA system. So I'll just let Andy take over the sharing of our system here.
Okay, so perfect. So apologies for not having my video on. I've got a bit of a technical difficulty on my camera. But yeah, essentially with regards to the next part of this session is just to show you really how easy it is to create a new SPA that is in this case going to be for client feedback. And it's a great use case because a lot of businesses and a lot of companies do want to get that feedback from their clients, and creating an SPA is a really good way to house that information because you can really tailor the questions that you're asking the customer. You can get that back in, you can report on it, and you can set some automations as Sam has shown you in a couple of the other examples. So what I'll run through today is how we start off by creating the SPA, and I'll explain some of the features that come with the particular module. And then how easy really it is to set up the custom fields that you're going to ask your customers for the feedback. So some questions, and then we'll set up the pipelines. I'll give you a couple of use cases that you could use pipelines for, especially for customer feedback, because you might have different products or different services that you're asking for feedback. So we could separate those kinds of answers into different pipelines. And then finally, I'll just show you how you can use the CRM form feature to create your feedback form. You can then embed it on your website. And then once the customer fills out that form, it will automatically populate the SPA item directly from your website. So as I say, what I'll do is I'll jump into Bittrex, and as we go into the CRM, to start off creating a SPA, what we need to do is just go into settings. So when we go into settings in here, then we can click on Smart Process Automation. So this is the starting point for all creations of Smart Process Automation. So what I want to do is I want to create a new one called Client Feedback. So I simply click on the Create button. And then I'll explain what these are in a moment, but essentially there's no wrong answer in this particular selection here, because all it's doing is going to pre-select a few checkboxes on the next page. So if I just click on Essentials Only, then what I'll do is I want to give the SPA a name. So what I'm going to do is Client Feedback here. So that's the name of the SPA. And then what do we want to include? What features do we want to include in there? So is your SPA going to find pipelines useful? So pipelines allow you to segment the data into different pipelines. And in client feedback sense, that is going to be a good use case, because the one that we're going to set up today is going to be Bittrex 24 feedback, but we might have another feedback form later on for training feedback, or we might have another one for support feedback. So we can create pipelines for different types of feedback all in one SPA. And then do we want to include stages? So if we want to include stages, then we can simply click on the checkbox. And in this case, we do, because we're going to create a series of stages to send some automatic responses back based on the feedback. With that, we're going to click on the automation rules, because we want to create a new email. We want to create an activity so automatically. So we're going to check that box. And then for the workflow designer, in this example, I'm not going to select this one because I don't need the workflow designer. What the workflow designer gives you the ability to do is a little bit more complex automations. So generally, you can get most things covered in the automation rules, but the workflow designer itself can just extend that capabilities of the automation. So I don't need it in this case for the moment. But then going back to what Sam said about permissions, do you want to make all roles have access to this particular SPA from the beginning? If you deselected that, this would mean that all roles that you already have set up for access permissions would have denied access to this particular SPA. So that might be a good use case in your employee onboarding and your employee records, where there might be some sensitive data in there. In my case, I don't mind who sees the feedback. I can tailor the permissions shortly. So those are the options that I will check to start off with. And then there are just a few more options on this left-hand side. SPA fields essentially allows you to connect the SPA to pre-existing fields that already exist inside the CRM. So you might be familiar with, for example, source. So sources, you can have a predefined list in the CRM settings, and you can utilize that source list if you wanted to, rather than creating a new field for your collection of sources. What is really important for me in this case is to make sure that I have the customer selected. This will give me a field that automatically allows me to connect it to a pre-existing contact inside the CRM. So when we're going to send out maybe a marketing email to provide feedback, when they submit the form, it's going to pre-populate the customer information and link it to that particular client in the CRM. And I'll show you how that works shortly. All the other options in here, I'm not going to select. So if we click on to CRM bindings in here, the CRM bindings is quite important if you would like to have a new tab in the contact itself. So where Sam showed you connecting two SPAs together, so you could see the employee and you could see the certification tab. That's going to be available inside a contact. So I'm going to select this and then also select add the details form. And this will become clearer when we have a look at it at the end, once a customer submits the feedback. We can bind it to other tools as well inside the CRM. So if we're going to create tasks from the client feedback that we get, we might want to click on tasks and click on task templates. That allows you then to associate tasks to the actual SPA item. So I'm going to have these selected. And again, if you wanted a calendar event connected to your SPA, just select it. There are not really any wrong selections in here. You can always go back in and change these should you want to, but it's just an explanation of how these SPAs can bind to other areas of the CRM. And finally, do you want to add this SPA link to the left-hand menu? In my case, I'm not going to. It's going to be available under the Smart Process Automation menu item inside the CRM. So if I click on Save, what that will then do is it will save my SPA in here, and then it will add it to the list on the screen that you'll see in a moment. So if we just wait for that to add, so you can see here we've got client feedback now appears at the top. So the second step, what you need to do once you've created your SPA is to set up the fields that you need. So in our case, we're going to create a feedback form for Bitrix 24. So on the menu next to where it says client feedback, I'm going to click on here and you can see where it says field settings. So this is the area where you can connect to, you can create the custom fields inside here. So if I click on create in the top right-hand corner, what that's going to do, it's going to give me the ability to create a custom field. So in my case, I'm going to create a list. And I'm going to, my first question is going to be, how satisfied are you with Bitrix 24? Then, because I've chosen a list, I can click on list values here. And then what I can do is put all of my options for the list itself. So I'm going to add a count to 1 to 5 in here, and then give it a scale, and then click on save. And what you need to do is you just need to repeat that from for all of the fields that you would like to have. So obviously, if you're building up a feedback form, then you're going to want to ask a few different questions. So the next question I'll ask again, we'll have a list field so we can give the customer some predefined answers. Which of the following words would you describe the product? So we could say in here, high quality. And again, what I'll do is I'll just give them for good value for money, time saver, and then we'll add lots of cool features. And then in here, what we might want to do is make it a multiple select option in here. So I can click on save. I'll add 2 more questions in here. So we can click on create. And if you wanted to have file uploads, if you wanted to have text fields, they're all obviously different options for you. So again, I'm going to add, how well does a product meet your needs? 1, not well at all. And then we'll go to 5 again in here. So you can sort of see you're building up your form. I'll add 1 more in a minute. Meets very well. And then click on save. And you can make these required in the form that you build in a moment. And then what we'll do is we'll add a large text box in here as well. So if we click on create, we can keep it on string this time. I can say, if you could change one thing about the product, what would it be? And then instead of a row count of 1, I can make that a large text field and classify that as that. So there we go. So I'll leave it as that. I'll just have 4 simple fields for the moment on how what we're going to ask for feedback. So that's the second step that you will need to do. So the third step, what we need to do is click into the smart process automation itself. So if we click on client feedback, what we'll be able to see is we'll be able to see the SPA that has been set up. So the next step of this is that we want to start setting up our pipelines in here. So if we can click on new pipeline, if you just wait for this to load. So just bear with me 1 moment.
Just while we do that, Andy, we had another question coming around. Is there a limit to the number of SPAs you can create? And there is no limit to the number of SPAs that you can create. It is unlimited. Obviously, really, you don't want to kind of overcomplicate the structure of the system. So make sure you're using the tool to build the processes you need. But as I say, you do need to have at least a professional cloud license to be able to access the smart process automation tool.
Let me just try and load that one back up. Just having some difficulties in my connection here. Just bear with me 1 moment. I'm not 100% sure why that one is not loading. I think I had a bit of a connection problem on here. But if I can go to the survey results, it's pretty similar in the sense of how it's been set up. The next step that we will need to do, that we were looking at, was to look at the pipelines itself. So if I click on all items here and click on pipelines, what I want to do is, the next step is to set up your actual pipelines in here. So as I mentioned, the good method of having pipelines is to segment the different types of data. So before we were talking about, this is going to be a Bittrex 24 satisfaction survey, feedback survey, but you might want to have training survey. So after you've had training with a client, you can then post out a form for the customer to fill out and provide that feedback on the training. And again, very similar with support, the end of year surveys, and so on and so forth. So what we would have is we would set this one to be Bitrix 24 feedback. We could then say this one would be training feedback. And when we create our CRM form, we can determine what pipeline the feedback comes in on. So training, and we might want to put support feedback here. And then once you've set up your pipelines, you just need to have a think about what stages you would want on your pipeline. So for our Bitrix 24, what we would say is that we would say new feedback received. And then we would set our one for feedback follow up. And then finally, what we would have is maybe a 1 month follow up from the feedback. And obviously these can be tailored depending on which pipelines. We might have different stages for training feedback. We might have different stages for support feedback. That's what the power of pipelines essentially gives you. So once you've set up your pipelines, and we're now in, if we switch to the Bitrix 24 feedback here, the next part is actually setting up some automations for your feedback. So what do you want to happen, for example, when you receive a new feedback? It might be that you want to notify a specific account manager for this kind of feedback. You might want to send out an email to the customer to thank them for providing their feedback. So to set up your automation rules, you can click on the automation rules here. And I'll just remove the ones just because I had a bit of problem connecting to the original one I created. What we can do is click on create, and then we can decide what stage we want the automation rule to be added on to. So I can click on here. And then, as I say, we might want to add a notification. So I can simply click on add notification here. And it might be that we click into here and we put a, so we want to see we have received a new, and then in here, we could maybe put, this one's going to be Bitrix 24 feedback form. And then in here, we might want to click on the 3 dots. And clicking on the 3 dots, what that gives you, it gives you the ability to pull in some data from what has been submitted into the SPA item itself. So if I click into here, I can scroll down, and what I want is going to be the contact. And it says text after it, so it's going to give me a friendly contact name, so I can see when the notification pops up, it's going to say it's come from Andy Naylor, for example. So I can click on the sender and I can specify any sender on here. I'll say Katie, and then the recipient is going to be the responsible person. And we can set that in the CRM form itself. So that's what we'll do to start off with, is send a notification. What we probably then want to do, and I recommend this for all automations, is to update the name of the actual feedback that comes in. Because if you don't update the name using automations, it can look a little bit ugly. It might say Bitrix feedback form hashtag 123, whatever ID it is. So what we try and say is add an automation just to update the name, just so you have a uniform look to all of the SPA items that get created. Now, based on that, what I probably want to do is update it again to the contact name. So I could just put contact text. So you can see here the name. If I wanted to update any other field that exists inside this SPA, I could click on select field and I would be able to find it. And then I would be able to update it with whatever it is that I would like to have. So I might say Bitrix 24 feedback, and then in here. So you can manually write things as well. And then the final part of this is probably going to send an email to the customer as an autoresponder. So I can click on create, and then in here, I can say send, and what it will say is send email to customer. And that's really good for any item, again, what you're using this for, because it will automatically send the customer an email And in my case, I'm going to send this to subject. Thank you for your feedback. And then in my body of my text, so I've just had some pre-written text in here. I can remove hello. And then again, what I can do is I can find that contact information in here, personalize it. So it's dynamic for every feedback that you get. And as long as they provide the email, which they will in the form, click on save. And then the final one, what we want to do in the first stage is going to be change stage. So we can automatically move it on in here, click on add, and then in here, I'll do it to wait for the previous, and then feedback follow-up. So what's going to happen is going to notify the person who's responsible for the feedback. We're going to update the item name. We're going to send the customer an email. And then after all those have completed, we're going to update the stage. And then finally, I'll just add one more so we can change the stage up here to feedback follow-up. And then what I'll do is I want to add an activity. So I want to plan an activity for the person who's responsible to follow up with the customer in at least 2 days' time. So we'll set a deadline of 2 days' time, follow up the clients, provided their feedback, check what they have said they use, and provide the resources for all these areas. So that's going to be assigned to the responsible person more or less straight away with a deadline of 2 days. And you can then add another change stage underneath. I could then add a task on the 1 month follow-up with a deadline for 1 month, and so on and so forth. So you can really, really automate this to achieve all of the automatic follow-ups and the manual aspects that you need to set up. So that's going to be really important, obviously, in your process to have a think about. And then the final part of setting up your items in here is going to be when you click on create for the first time. What you will see is you will see all of the fields that you've created pretty similar to this. So you can see in here, I had one already pre-built for my how satisfied are you with Bitrix 24. Those are the ones that we had previously set up in here, all of my answers. So what you can do is if you wanted a different layout, then we're in the common form view. So this is the view that everybody sees when they come into the SPA item. I might want to add a new section in here and just put client information. And then again, drag that to the top. I could delete that section at the minute and then click on select field. And when you click on select field, it gives you access to all of the fields that you would like to put into that section. So I could just click on customer. I'll click on select. I'm not going to ask for the company name. So I'll hide the company in here. I'm only going to ask for the contact name. And I'm going to click on show always. So if for any reason a contact doesn't get created, I can click into it and add it quite quickly myself. So that's essentially the fourth step that you would need to do when you're initially starting off with this. So you can then, once you've set this up and you're happy with it, the next thing that you need to do, and probably the final step of this, is going to be you need to create a CRM form. So if we go to more and then add-ons and then our CRM forms. Now, I do believe, I think I'm right in saying that every version of Bitrix has the CRM forms, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So what I can do is I can click on add here, and then that will go and provide me with the CRM form builder. And how I would recommend doing it is a multi-page form. I quite like the way that you can separate the contact information to the feedback information. So I'm going to select multi-page form in here. Now, what I can do is I will, in here, page 1, I'll call this contact information. In here. So we've already got the fields for contact, and that's really important for the first name and the last name. But I also want the email and phone in here. So if these weren't here for any reason, so let's just remove the phone just to show you. I'll drag that up into the first section. If I click on add field, click on contact in here, I can find any field that exists inside a contact. So if I click on phone, I can click on add. I can then drag that up into the first section. And then the second part is probably the most important part for this particular SPA item is Bitrix 24 feedback questions. Okay, so if I click on the little pencil, click on add, and then you'll be able to see in here our survey results in here. So click on survey results, and I can have access again to any field that I've created inside my SPA. So I can click on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, click on add, and now you can see that those have been added in here quite nicely, and they're ready essentially to go. You can have agreements in your form if you want to. I'm not going to have any on mine, but this is probably the most important aspect, because what do we want it to create? Now, a lot of people before smart process automations came in, what a lot of people were using were deals and deal pipelines. But now that smart process automations come in, you should really use deals solely for your sales opportunities. Anything outside your sales opportunities, you should essentially move to smart process automation, because it gives you exactly the same features, but you can essentially create your own module for it, like we are doing at the minute. So if I click on smart process automation, that will give me access to my survey results here that I'm using. If I click on expert mode, this is what I was referring to, is that you can create multiple sets of these forms. So I've got Bitrix 24 feedback, but if we had the training feedback, I could click into here and click on where do I want this feedback result to go. I want to get it to go into training feedback. So I'm going to select that one in here. I'm going to allow duplicates just because I might want multiple people from the same organization to go, and I don't want it to recognize email addresses if they're using info@ or similar to that. So I'm going to allow duplicates there. And then again, you can customize whatever you would like. The send button. If you want to have hidden values, if you click on expert mode here, you can have default values. That's a hidden field. So you might not want the customer to fill out a specific field, but instead you could put that in the background. That's a really good one for if you're using CRM forms for generating leads, because you can put the source as a hidden field in here. You can have post submit actions that can redirect it to a thank you page. I can customize the message. So I could click on here, and then we could say, thank you for your feedback, just as an example. So in here. So as I say, you can personalize this as much as you would like in here. The only other area, if you're not too familiar with CRM forms, is the ability to have conditional fields. So it might be that if you wanted a 1 in how good Bitrix is, it might show another field and say, please explain why you gave it a 1. And then you could use that rule in here. So the CRM forms are quite a flexible and powerful tool. In the case of mine, so I'll click on other. The final part of this is I'm going to call this Bitrix 24 feedback. I'm going to have the responsible person for everything that comes in as me. And then it should be good to go. So if I click on save, now what we would normally do in this case is if we go and open up back into here, so you can see our Bitrix 24 feedback, what we would normally recommend to do now is create a new page on your website, maybe called Bitrix 24 feedback. Click on here, and what we can do is we want it on a website page, so we can click on copy code. That will give you the code here, and you can simply paste that into a page on your website. So if you're using something like WordPress, you can paste that in with one of the widgets that you have for HTML code, I think, and then you can just paste that in, and the form will nicely display on your website. I'm not going to do that in today's session. What I'll do in here instead is open it up on a public link. So in here, what that will do is it will provide me with the contact form that I've just created. So you can see in here, let's put my first name, last name, email, and phone number. And then because it's a 2-page split, what I want to do is how satisfied. I'm very satisfied with here. I think it's good value for money. Again, meets it very well. Which one of these 3 features are you most valuable to you? So I would say in our case, it's going to be the CRM or projects. Again, you can have these multiple select. If you could change one thing about Bittrex, so I would say nothing, love it. And then click on send. So you can see in here, that has now notified me from Katie. So that's that notification that we had automatically sent in here, which is great. And then if I now go back into my survey results in here, and then if I go into the Kanban view, so as you'll be able to see, it's renamed it. So I had a couple of other ones already in before I did that automation. It's called it Bittrex 24 Feedback Andy Naylor. You can see that it's nicely created that contact in here. If contact already existed, it would bind it to that particular contact as well. It's given me all of the answers quite nicely formatted inside here. If I look at the automation rules at what's actually actioned, so we saw the notification, it updated the feedback name, it will have sent the email to my personal email, and then it updated the stage, and it's created and planned the activity, which you can see nicely on here, because this is the activity that has been planned for 2 days' time. You can set the activity to be only working days, working hours, if you wanted to. You can see, again, the outgoing email successfully sent from here. Again, the email has been in here. So everything is performed exactly as we expected. One of the things that we can do in here is click into the contact itself. So you can see that we've just been created. And what I was mentioning about binding it to the contact is that now we can see the survey results for this particular contact. So I can click into here, click into survey results, and I can see directly from in here all of the answers that Andy provided on the feedback form. So I can see it by scrolling, or obviously I can click back into it and it would open up and we can see where it is in here. So as I say, this is just an example really of getting feedback, creating that SPA with all of the relevant fields. I think this opens the door to many, many other options, as Sam was mentioning at the start, for different use cases. But I think if you use the CRM forms and all the, obviously the features inside there to embed it on your website, you can really use the power of Bittrex and the SPA tool to collect the results you need and then perform the necessary automations on there, taking some of the groundwork away from your team to manually process this information, maybe in spreadsheets or however it is that you do it. So yes, I think that's in a nutshell. That's how we would go from creating the SPA, setting up the fields, setting up the pipelines and the automation, laying out the data that we need, and then creating the CRM form to submit that feedback. I think that's quite a well-rounded example that hopefully a lot of people could potentially use these tools for. So hopefully you found that useful. I think in terms of today's session, I think that we've covered quite a lot there. Obviously, if you've got any questions, more than happy to answer them. And again, our contact details, sales@intraface email is on the screen. So I don't know if Sam, I don't know if I don't know if any questions have come through at all, or are we
just
good?
one, Andy, just to go through, how can we add the SPA title to the actual tab on the CRM system? So let's say the survey results there, because we can show that, can't we, inside the CRM system, if we just had a question there.
Do you mean in the top menu up here?
Yeah, so we can
Yeah.
show that in the actual tab, so we can configure the menu.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something that we try and recommend to do in all entities in the CRM is configure the menu, because getting rid of the items that you may or may not use just removes some of the noise that can distract people to click and collect and select. So if I wanted survey results in here, I would click on more, finish, customize menu, move that one up. Maybe I don't want to see the rest of the smart process automations and I could move it up. Maybe I don't want to see settings. Again, you can really clear up anything that you don't use. And that is a personal setting. It's not a system-wide setting. So maybe you only deal with leads, deals, customers, and survey results. What I've done there, if Sam logged in under his account, he wouldn't see the same menu at the top as myself. So we definitely recommend doing that.
Yeah.
We also recommend doing that inside every entity as well, because again, if we didn't want to see dependencies in here, we can click on configure menu and we can hide it.
Yeah.
It just means that you're utilizing only the menu options that you need to be able to see. And again, you can do that on this menu to the right as well. So yeah, it's just a handy tip, I think, to have.
Yeah. And just as we've seen with our customers, it just takes the CRM system really to that next level. As Andy's shown there, being able to customize the actual layout of the menu there. You can really personalize it and really show the processes that you want to have within your Bitrix CRM system. So it does essentially make the Bitrix CRM completely customizable to how you want to manage your processes. With the SPA tool, you don't need to force everything into leads and deals. It just allows you to completely customize the CRM system. Okay, I think that's the end of today's questions. So as you can see here, if you do have any other questions, you can contact us, sales@intraface.com. One of our team will be happy to assist you. But I think that's the end of today's smart process automation training. So thank you very much for joining us today. Hope you found that